G'day, it's Kris, and we're here to talk about Diablo 4. Now, this game has been out for about a week now for me, and before that, an extra 4 days. And I attempted the level 100 race. It went as you would expect it. I died once, and then much later, I died again. And it was, fantastic. Because both of my deaths were a little bit beyond my control. The second one was a bit more my fault, but it's all about the greater problem of Diablo 4. Now, there's a lot of things we need to talk about with Diablo 4, so let's find out. Should you play Diablo 4 in its current state right now? Personally, I think if you're not the hugest ARPG fan in the world and you're not planning to invest literally hundreds of hours into this game in the next month, that's right, next month, you should probably not buy this game at launch, or not buy this game right now. This game could quite potentially be a decent game, but there are so many issues that it needs to deal with. First and foremost being, who are they targeting with this game? Are they trying to target the extreme high proficiency gamers from Path of Exile? Or are they trying to cater to, well, the more casual crowd that you would expect for a Diablo 3 game? And this juxtaposition has kind of left it in a really weird spot. And one of the best ways we can talk about this is the itemization in Diablo 4 has a lot to be desired. Diablo 4 specifically uses item score, and I'm not a huge fan of item score because it really boils items down to green number go up, green number is good, red number go down, red number is bad. And that's overly aggressive, but it's the truth in this game because it doesn't matter what resistances you put your effort into. It doesn't matter like what skill choices you make choices about. At the end of the day, two things matter: the amount of damage you deal and the armor of your character. Your resistances don't matter. Your bonus skills don't matter. Your deal more damage to close, to far, to distance. None of that matters. Damage while healthy. Who cares? Because that doesn't matter unless the original big number is big. Damage go up? Good. Armor go up? Good. Because that's the fundamental truth, which means that the end game in Diablo 4 literally boils down to having a high item level item, just being competent enough in the Paragon board, especially when you're trying to push real end game content such as the Nightmare Dungeons. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to really try out this end game because the other major problem of this game is it's a fucking grind. To get to level 100, they say, oh, it'll take an average gamer about 150 hours. You for real? You want people to play 150 hours to get to the point where you can actually start making choices with your character, like real meaningful choices? Because it's at that point where the item level doesn't matter as much. You can start actually focusing on these substats like bonus skills or damage to close, damage to vulnerable, critical damage, critical strike chance, attack speed. All this stuff only really matters once you're near the end of the leveling phase. I'd say probably around level 80 to 90, but even then you're going to have one more item change before you really set yourself in your ways. And then once you're at 100, you're definitely probably still looking for that final item change. And it's just, it all rings hollow. So it makes you not want to invest in items during the actual leveling, which is 0 to 50. And if I was designing this game, I would have made item level end at level 50. That's just me personally. I think that you should, while you're teaching the player how to play the game, constantly have them get new items so they can see these new affixes and old affixes and how they work with other parts of the game. Like, oh, maybe I should be stacking this affix because it helps with every other aspect of the game. Yeah. I shall get damage resistance while burning and I'll stack that to the moon. That would be real great. But the thing is, you can get all the damage reduction in the world. It ain't meaning shit compared to armor. The way armor works in Diablo 4 is it's linear scaling. So basically, you are at the same level as the enemies in the world, and they do X amount of damage to you based upon your armor. So if you have a lot of armor, enemies will do 0 damage to you. Legitimately, you can get enough armor that enemies in the game cannot harm you, which means why would you invest in any other resource other than armor? Because guess what? Not getting damaged is better than reducing getting damaged. So for example, you have 50% armor rating. This is going to be a vague number, but it's the truth. So you have 50% armor rating, and you then reduce that with damage that from burning is reduced by 50%, which means you're reducing it initially by 50%, and then you're reducing it again by 50%, which is 25%, which is good. But you could just focus on stacking more armor and reduce that again to 80%, to 90%, to 100% reduction through armor. Whereas that reduction percent only works after armor. So the more armor you have, the less useful that burning resistance is. And it's not as if you can just not stack these burning resistances or reduction to close or reduction to distance, because you're going to get them tangentially through the armor as well. So it's not like they're special resources. So that means like every time you see a damage reduction point in the Paragon tree, you'd be preferred to use that on, say, getting bonus strength or bonus armor, because that will actually give you more meaningful reduction in the game. Now you can say, well, once you're at max nightmare dungeons, you won't ever be possible to stack the armor up that high. And you'd be right. But armor is the only thing that reduces physical damage. So if you're not stacking armor, you are extremely susceptible to one-shots from, say, a corpse bow off screen firing a random shot and it just happens to hit you. Or maybe there's a succubus that floats around you and you're just not quite able to hit it because it's floating around you, and it shoots a homing shot and you kill the succubus, but that homing shot just barely nicks you. Yeah, you're probably gonna die because you didn't have armor. And that's just not really a fun way to scale the game. The next problem is there are a bit too balanced in all the builds in Diablo. Every single build sort of does the same goal at same level, which means, what I mean by this is when you're the same level as the enemies you're fighting, it honestly doesn't matter what build you're playing. So you never really feel like the choice that you made of your build is somehow the best choice, because anyone can do what you're doing as long as they have the right item level, which is good and bad. I don't know how I feel about it. I like that you can do whatever build you want, but I kind of like also knowing that if I know a little bit more about the game, I can pick a build that will just rock. And right now, the builds that do rock are kind of not fun to play because they require enormous amounts of clicking. So they're not really the builds you want to level with. For example, Rogue, there is the twisting blade build, and that requires a lot of management. You have to get behind the character, you have to cast a lot of spells, and you have to just generally be on top of yourself the entire time you're playing the game. And it's exhausting, especially when you're playing 150 hours to get to level 100, and you're just sort of regretting choosing a more optimal build over a lazy build, because the lazy build you can just play while not thinking. And that's what people want if they're going to have to grind for 150 hours. I know from WoW Classic players, they absolutely love and hate that middle level dungeon, which is from level 30 to 50 pretty much. You're just sitting in that dungeon for literally 20 hours just to get past those levels in that middle section. And that is okay, but it's not what people come to for fun. Now, what an ARPG leveling system should be, this is big quotes, should be, you should start at level 1, and level 1 to level, say, 20 should be like really high, really fast. And then it should start slowly going down in a reverse exponential graph. That's how it should be. That's how it is in PoE. That's how it is in Diablo 2. That's how it, well, it's not in Diablo 3, but that's how it is in a lot of RPGs. They want you to level at the start really fast and then slow it down. But in Diablo 4, it starts really fast and then it just sort of goes chunk and then slow. So every level past level 50 feels like you're leveling 99 to 100 in PoE. Every single level. It's exhausting. Now you can say, but Paragon levels, you get 1, you get 3 for every level. So, you know, it's technically you're leveling really fast. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But that's not how the game works. The game actually scales to your level. There's another thing in the game, which is enemies reduction based on your level. So if you go into a nightmare dungeon, say 25, which would be level 75, and you are level 70, you are going to do enormously less damage to a level 75 creature than you would if you were level 75, because every level below the monster level that you're fighting is a 10% reduction in your damage to them and a 10% amplification from the enemy to you. So once you start getting to like the real end game of the Nightmare Dungeon, say Nightmare Dungeon 75, which is level 100, I'm pretty sure. Let me think my math. Starts at 50, goes to 100, so it goes to 150. So it'll be level 125 actually. And you're level 100, you're doing 250% less damage to them, and they're doing 250% more damage to you. And that just sucks. Like, how is that any way fair for anyone? When we compare it to Path of Exile, levels don't actually matter at all in Path of Exile. What matters is your itemization and your choices within the skill tree itself. You can do literally end game content in Path of Exile at level 1. You will probably die, but you can do it. You can legitimately kill the hardest, most difficult content in Path of Exile at level 1, because there is no magical reduction or gain for the characters based upon the level the character is. The level the character is just how many points they can put into their PoE leveling tree. Whereas in Diablo 4, every level matters. It gives you large boosts when you're trying to push nightmare dungeons. So if you're level 100, you can ace a tier 1 nightmare dungeon easy. You can ace a nightmare dungeon tier 45 easy. You can ace a Nightmare Dungeon 50 easy, because that's same level content, which is what you were doing in the overworld, in basic dungeons, in every other aspect of the game. But once you start getting to Nightmare Dungeons above 50, the monster level goes above your level and you start doing less damage and you start dealing less damage. Now, these are all really significant problems to Diablo 4, and they're huge problems for the casual player because they're not going to understand this or even know about this for over 150 hours when the game actually sort of starts for legitimately most people. You're spending 150 hours just to get to the starting line. And we got season 1, like I said, less than a month away. I don't think the casual player is ever going to get anywhere close to that. It took me a week of playing pretty hard to get to level 68 on my hardcore character before it died. And then I was at that point over the game, absolutely and desperately over the game. A week in Path of Exile, I would have had one character to level 90, and I would be considering a second character and probably would have got to level 60 in like a day. Like, it's just night and day difference how much more smooth the leveling process is in Path of Exile compared to Diablo 4. And it's night and day how many more bosses there are in Path of Exile compared to Diablo 4. It's really hard to recommend Diablo 4 in its current state. I think there's a lot of great things. I think the skills look fine. The characters move great. When you press a key on the keyboard, it actually does something on the screen, and it feels really shitty that this is what we praise in modern gaming. The game works. Like, go figure. They did their job. They made a game that is actually functional. But is the game fun when you start thinking about the meta aspects of the game? What are you doing in the moment-to-moment gameplay in a meta sense? Like the minute-to-minute gameplay, fantastic. The hour-to-hour gameplay, not fun at all. Yahtzee Croshaw had a really good talk about this when he was doing his dev guide once a week for an entire year. He was talking about there are 4 things that you need to think about when you're making a game. What is the second-to-second gameplay, which is what is happening on screen this moment? Is that fun? Next is the minute-to-minute gameplay. What are the choices that you're making for that thing? That would be, do you go left or do you go right in this dungeon path? Is that fun? And those 2 things, fantastic job, Diablo 4. You did it. Those are fun. Then you have the hour-to-hour gameplay. What are the choices you're making the character to improve that character from the last hour to the next hour? And this is where Diablo 4 completely fumbles the ball, because there is no hour-to-hour gameplay. The hour-to-hour gameplay is one choice, maybe 3 choices every hour on your skill tree, in your Paragon tree, and that's not really good enough. Then what is your day-to-day gameplay? And that would be like, how are you actually building your character for its final goal? Is it getting towards its final goal? Is that being achieved? Is that actually fun? And it's absolutely not fun, because you just start seeing more and more of the cracks that are in the game. And you're realizing that this minute-to-minute gameplay isn't enough to subsist your desires when you're playing Diablo 4. Anyway, I've been yakking on for about 19 minutes, and you guys probably all stopped watching at the 30-second mark. Hope you guys enjoyed. Give it a subscribe. I don't recommend you play or buy Diablo 4 in its current state. And if you do want to play it, really just understand that everything you're currently doing is going to be reset in July. Enjoy. See you later. Bye-bye.